The pound of flesh which I demand of him is dearly bought, 'tis mine, and I will have it. If you deny me, fie upon your law. There is no force in the decrees of Venice. I stand for judgment. Answer, shall I have it? Shylock. Shylock. No, not me. Him. I'm his friend. I'm his best friend. Actually, I'm his only friend. I'm Tubal. My name is Tubal. I play Tubal in The Merchant of Venice. Tubal. T-U-B-A-L. Okay, it's not a very big part. In fact, it's only one scene. Actually, it's half a scene. I come in halfway through somebody else's scene. It's one. 8 lines. That's my contribution. 8 lines, 1 scene. But it's a great scene. It's a great scene for Shylock, anyway. But he could not do it without Tubal. Tubal is crucial to the scene, to Shylock, to the play. Of course, it is Shylock that people remember. You mention The Merchant of Venice to anybody. Ah, Shylock, the Jew. Famous Jews. Moses, Abraham, Barbara Streisand, the Virgin Mary, Jesus Christ, Shylock. Tubal may not be as important as Shylock, but you know, he does have some status. Some status in the play. Well, some status among the Jewish community anyway. You know, he is the only other Jewish man in The Merchant of Venice. Actually, he's the only other Jewish man in the whole of Shakespeare. The first time you hear my name, Shylock refers to me as Tubal, a wealthy Hebrew of my tribe. And my relationship with him, it is unique. Well, I am the only person in the play who likes him. Shakespeare realized, you see, that Shylock had to have one ally, and so he created Tubal. And Tubal is totally Shakespeare's creation. He's an original, unlike Shylock, or the plot of The Merchant of Venice, which he pinched, like he pinched the plots of most of his plays. The original, you know, it's a 14th century Italian fairy story called Il Pecorone. Il Pecorone. That means the simpleton. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful lady who lived in Belmont. She's looking for a husband. She auditions her suitors in bed. Said here she was a lady. The man who can get through a full night with her wins her hand. Well, as he's already had the rest of her, you can imagine what he's really after is her fortune. For the man who doesn't last the course, she gets to keep his fortune. She cheats, though. She drugs their bedtime drinks. Our hero comes along, tries his luck with her twice. Each time he ends up with a hangover, she ends up with his shettles. After the second attempt, he's so broke he has to borrow money from his godfather in Venice to make the third attempt. Godfather, in turn, borrows money from a rich Jew who asks him to pledge in return a pound of his own flesh. Meanwhile, back in Belmont, the lovers are having such a good time. Now she's got rid of that sleeping draught. They forget all about the debt until it's too late. The Jew refuses to take his money. He wants his pound of flesh. So the case comes to court. Our heroine, disguised as a lawyer, argues that yes, he can have his pound of flesh. But in cutting it off, he must not spill one drop of blood. Thwarted, the Jew tears up the bond in disgust. The lovers, well, they go back to doing what they do best. Il Pecorone. That's almost the same story as The Merchant of Venice, except there's more sex in it. And in The Merchant of Venice, Portia, our heroine, gives Bassanio, our hero, a ring, a betrothal ring, a ring that he swears never to part from, lose, or give away. Unlike The Merchant of Venice, the rich Jew in Il Pecorone is not even given a name. It's a bit part. Yeah, okay, a bit like Tubal. But then along comes Shakespeare. Shakespeare and his imagination. And he creates Tubal and Shylock. He creates us from his imagination. Well, you see, he had to, because Shakespeare, he never even met a Jew. Officially. Not anybody who would admit to it anyway. Officially, there were no Jews living in England when Shakespeare wrote The Merchant of Venice, because Jews were banned. Every Jew had been expelled 300 years before. Now, of course, there'd been Jews in England since Roman times. You know, we get a mention in the Doomsday Book. Well, Jews were useful, you see, for lending money. Money lending was forbidden to Christians by the Bible, so they let Jews do it, and despised us for it. Some Jews, they made huge fortunes. Oh, we made enemies too, of course. It was in 1190 in the city of York, just before the Passover. Some citizens decide that the Jewish community is getting too rich and powerful, led by a man called Richard Malebis, who is up to his ears in debt to Jewish moneylenders. The crowd start pillaging and setting fire to Jewish homes. We Jews flee to take refuge in York Castle, but we are pursued there, besieged for days. Eventually, we are given the option to die or to convert to Christianity. Most of us decide that it's more honorable to die. So we burn our possessions. We cut the throats of our wives and our children. We kill ourselves. At dawn the next day, what's left of the Jewish community emerge to take up Malebis' offer of Christian baptism and save our lives. As we step out, blinking, into the sunlight, we are all butchered. Over the next 100 years, Jews are killed, beaten, burnt, until King Edward I comes up with his final solution to the Jewish question. How do you get rid of an unpopular minority? Well, you just tell them to get out. To be fair, he did give 4 months' notice. Any Jew remaining in England after All Saints' Day 1290 could be... Well, there were only a few thousand of us. So we packed our bags and we crossed the English Channel. But the expulsion idea caught on. First England, then France, then Spain, then Portugal. Venice. Venice is one of the last places in Western Europe where Jews are tolerated, so long as we stick to the ghetto. The ghetto, that's where the word ghetto comes from, Venice. The first ghetto, it was in Venice. The Ghetto Nuovo, high walls, gates, guards, a dusk to dawn curfew. It kept Jews and Christians apart, but close enough to carry on business together, the business of lending and borrowing money. Usury. Nowadays we call it banking. Shakespeare, you know, never mentions the ghetto. Not once. Perhaps he didn't know about it. Perhaps he didn't know much about Venice. Geography was not a strong point. This is the man who gives Bohemia a coastline. Small Latin, less Greek, no geography. But I'm sure that Shakespeare knew that in Venice, Italian Jews were outnumbered by German Jews. German Jews from north of the Alps, the Ashkenazim. Ashkenazim were the experts at money lending. Ashkenazim, like Shylock. And me. You know, you can hear it sometimes in the way that Shylock speaks. He searches for a word. He puts his sentences together a bit odd. You can tell he's not speaking his first language. Not so obvious with Tubal, though. Yeah, maybe because I've only got 8 lines. No, Shakespeare, I think, deliberately gives me only 8 lines, because Shakespeare, I think, sees Tubal as a strong, silent type. I know, according to the script, I am only in that one scene, because that is the only scene in which I speak. But you know, these stage directions, they're notoriously unreliable. People made them up after Shakespeare was dead. Shakespeare wasn't there to tell them that maybe he wanted Tubal there with Shylock all the time. A strong, silent presence. I'm sure he's there the very first time that we meet Shylock. Bassanio, a young lover, needs money to go to Belmont to woo the Lady Portia. He asks his friend Antonio, that's the merchant of the title, Antonio. He asks his friend Antonio for a loan. Well, Antonio's a bit strapped for cash, so he tells him to arrange for a meeting with Shylock. Well, I'm his friend. I'm his best friend. Yeah, okay, I'm his only friend. Of course I was there to offer a bit of moral support. He just wouldn't let me get a word in. No, I just stood there. Oh, we met Bassanio just a very short distance from the Rialto. 3,000 ducats. Well, for 3 months. Well, Antonio shall become bound. Well, 3,000 ducats for 3 months and Antonio bound. Antonio is a good man. My reason in saying that he is a good man is to have you understand me that he is sufficient. Yet his means are in supposition. He hath an argosy bound to Tripolis, another to the Indies. I understand, moreover, upon the Rialto, he hath a third at Mexico, a fourth for England, and other ventures he hath squandered abroad. But ships are but boards, sailors but men. There be land rats and water rats, water thieves and land thieves. I mean pie rats. Then there is the peril of waters, winds, and rocks. The man is notwithstanding sufficient. 3,000 ducats. I think I may take his bond. Ah, what news on the Rialto? Here comes Signor Antonio. How like a fawning publican he looks. I hate him, for he is a Christian, but more for that in low simplicity he lends out money gratis and brings down the rate of usance here with us in Venice. If I can catch him once upon the hip, I will feed fat the ancient grudge I bear him. He hates our sacred nation, and he rails even there where merchants most do congregate on me, my bargains, and my well-won thrift, which he calls interest. Cursed be my tribe if I forgive him. I am debating of my present store, and by the near guess of my memory, I cannot instantly raise up the gross of full 3,000 ducats. What of that? Tubal, a wealthy Hebrew of my tribe, will furnish me. But hear you, methought you said you neither lend nor borrow upon advantage. Shylock couldn't resist that, reminding Antonio that he never borrowed money from usurers. All he gets from Antonio is a mouthful of abuse. But Shylock's got the upper hand, because he's the one with the money. Signor Antonio, many a time and oft in the Rialto, you have rated me about my moneys and my usances. Still have I borne it with a patient shrug. For sufferance is the badge of all our tribe. You call me misbeliever, cutthroat dog, and spit upon my Jewish gabardine, and all for use of that which is mine own. Well, then it now appears you need my help. Go to then, you come to me and you say, Shylock, we would have moneys. You say so? You that did void your room upon my beard, and foot me as you'd spurn a stranger cur over your threshold, moneys is your suit. What should I say to you? Should I not say, hath a dog money? Is it possible a cur could lend 3,000 ducats? Or shall I bend low, and in a bondman's key, with bated breath and whispering humbleness, say this: Fair sir, you spat on me on Wednesday last. You spurned me such a day. Another time you called me dog. And for these courtesies I lend you thus much moneys. Oh, that's too much for Antonio. He threatens to kick and spit at Shylock again. Shylock loved provoking him. Well, it played right into his hands. Ha 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 ha! Why, look you, how you storm! I would be friends with you and have your love. Forget the shames that you have stained me with. Supply your present wants, and take no doit of usance for my monies. Go with me to a notary, seal me there your single bond, and in a merry sport, if you repay me not on such a day, in such a place, such sum or sums as are expressed in the condition, let the forfeit be nominated for an equal pound of your fair flesh, to be cut off and taken in what part of your body pleaseth me. Ha ha. Ha ha. A joke? I thought it was a joke. Antonio was as rich as Croesus. He had a few risky investments, but unlike us Jews, he could diversify. 3,000 ducats. That was nothing to him. He agreed. I offered to go along with them to the notary, you know, the local lawyer, to act as a witness. All of us were smiling, laughing. Even the notary was laughing. Normally you need an appointment to make a joke with one of them. Another thing, you know, Shylock did not need my help to raise the cash. Tubal, a wealthy Hebrew of my tribe, will furnish me. Business talk. I wish he had asked me. I could have turned him down. I didn't realize then, you see, just how bitter Shylock was. Oh, not without cause. You know, all through that scene, while Antonio's asking him for money, he's calling him a devil. He's threatening him. He's laughing at him. Well, no, he's laughing at us. Comic figures. No, that's what we were. That's what was expected of Jews on stage. Comedy and villainy. Comic not because we told jokes, though let's face it, a few Jewish jokes might have livened things up a bit, but comic because people enjoyed laughing at us. You see, to our first audience, to Shakespeare's first audience, that is what we were. Comic villains. Don't blame Shakespeare. No, you can't blame Shakespeare. It was an old English tradition, like disemboweling heretics. A theatrical tradition, too. Those medieval plays when actors used to trundle about on wagons, acting out scenes from the Bible. Jews were always the baddies. Was the excuse for some terrible overacting. But you know, Jews were good box office. A man called Christopher Marlowe knew that, and that's why he wrote a play called The Jew of Malta. The Jew of Malta. It was a smash hit 10 years before Shakespeare even thought of The Merchant of Venice. And what a part! Barabbas in The Jew of Malta. Listen to my words, and I will teach thee that shall stick by thee. First be thou void of these affections, compassion, love, vain hope, and heartless fear. Be moved at nothing, see thou pity none, but to thyself smile when the Christians moan. As for myself, I walk abroad o' nights and kill sick people groaning under walls. Aha! Sometimes I go about and poison wells. God, I'd love to play Barabbas. It's a wonderful part. You know, that man is a total monster. While trying to murder his own daughter, he gets to poison an entire nunnery. And what an exit. Much better than Shylock's. He falls into a vat of boiling oil. Psst. Not often done nowadays. Well, you can see why, except, you know, Marlowe had it in for all religions because he was an atheist. It's not so much that the Christians and the Muslims in the play are much better people than the Jew. They're just not such good parts. You know, the first actor to play Barabbas, he would have worn a huge hooked nose. And this wig, it would have been ginger. Yeah, ginger. Because Judas's hair was supposed to have been ginger. Judas and Barabbas, two of the original Jewish baddies. Now, they both feature in this book here. Obtainable from all good hotel bedrooms. Oh, that's okay. They expect you to borrow them. Don't they? And who is this Gideon, anyway? Gideon? Sounds like a nice Jewish boy. What's he doing? Giving away New Testaments. Now, it was the governor's custom at the feast to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called Christ?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why, what crime has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." All the people answered, "Let his blood be on us and on our children." Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Let his blood be on us and on our children. There's 2,000 years of Jewish persecution based on that. Let his blood be on us and on our children. Shylock had a child, you know. Yeah, a daughter. She was called Jessica. Shylock, he was a widower. His wife, Leah, had died and left him to bring up little Jessica all by himself. Now I know I'm partial because I'm his friend. I'm his best friend. Okay, I'm his only friend. But Shylock, he's a single parent. He's from an ethnic minority. He's got a very stressful job. And he lives in a ghetto. Of course he was strict. A teenage daughter. Very attractive girl. Not easy. She hated being kept at home. She thought her house was a kind of hell. She thought her father was a tyrant. Oh, that was a terrible night. Shylock had turned down an invitation to have dinner with Antonio and his Christian friends. Well, he knew what they were like, and he was afraid they'd serve him pork. It was me that persuaded him to go. Well, they were doing business together. I thought it might help improve relations a bit. You know, I even offered to walk him over there. We're just about to leave when Shylock gets to hear that there is going to be a mask party that night. Oh, a mask party? Me? I was dumbstruck. I couldn't say anything. I just stood there. You see, Venice was notorious for masks. Noisy street parties, loud music, Christian boys getting drunk, throwing up. Worse. The best excuse for bad behavior in Venice was a mask. What? Are there masks? Hear you me, Jessica. Lock up my doors, and when you hear the drum and the vile squealing of the wry-necked fife, clamber not you up to my casements then, nor thrust your head into the public street to gaze on Christian fools with varnished faces, but stop my house's ears. I mean my casements. Let not the sound of shallow foppery enter my sober house. By Jacob's staff, I swear I have no mind of feasting forth tonight. I am bid forth to supper, Jessica. There are my keys. But wherefore should I go? I am not bid for love. They flatter me. but yet I'll go in hate to feed upon the prodigal Christian. Well, Jessica, go in. Perhaps I will return immediately. Do as I bid you. Shut doors after you. Fast bind, fast find. A proverb never stale in thrifty mind. And off we went, arm in arm. Well, it was always safer to leave the ghetto in pairs, in case there was somebody hanging about outside waiting to do a bit of Jew baiting. And of course, you couldn't miss Shylock and me. Well, apart from anything else, we would have been wearing our Jew badges. Oh, yes, they were compulsory. Of course, we hated wearing them. Most people, you know, think that it was the Nazis who introduced the Jew badge, the yellow Star of David. It was a European directive 800 years ago. All Jews to wear distinctive badges. That was to prevent interbreeding. You see, for a Gentile to mate with a Jew was on a par with incest, sodomy, bestiality. Also meant that we couldn't apply for undesignated jobs or move in next door. And this European directive, it came from Rome. From Rome. A Lateran council called by Pope Innocent III. Yeah, Innocent. Well, they got a sense of humor too. Oh, and it didn't have to be the yellow Star of David. No, there was a choice. Italian, you see, style, not just function. You could choose a circle, half black, half white, so. You could choose a black circle within a white circle, so. Oh, there's this one. Looks a bit like a pair of gravestones. It's made of yellow felt. That turned out to be a very expensive designer label. If you'd been a Jew in England in the 12th century, that's the one that you'd have been wearing. If you'd survived. (1144), just before Easter. Cold, damp day, walking in a wood near the English city of Norwich. That's a big pile of leaves. What's under there? Here. I reckon that's a shallow grave. Yeah, there's a body here. That's the body of a child. That's a little boy. That's little William. That's little William, the Skinner's apprentice. We'll never know how he died. Disease, hunger, exposure. But rumors began to spread that he had been abducted by local Jews, who on the second day of the Passover had crucified him and used his blood to make matzah. Matzah, that's the unleavened bread that we Jews eat at the Passover. The little boy was taken away, and he was buried properly by the monks. He became a holy martyr. Miracles were done in his name. Little William became Saint William. And that was the beginning of the blood libel. The blood libel, the excuse for the wholesale massacre of Jews. Jews kill children. They circumcise them. They crucify them. They eat them. They use them in black magic. They drink their blood. The blood libel started in England. Didn't stop here. Spread right across Europe, France, Germany, Italy, as far east as Serbia. Oh, the blood libel really took root in Eastern Europe. Stories of Christians abducted by night. The blood drained from their bodies by men who hated Christ. Nowadays, of course, those stories are most closely associated with a place in Eastern Europe called Transylvania. Yeah. Dracula. 1946. June 1946. That's just 1 year after we knew about the camps. Officially. 40 Polish Jews were killed by Polish Christians because it was thought they had murdered a child and used his blood to make matzah. 1946. 40 Polish Jews. Drop in the ocean. That's enough real life, huh? Let's get back to the theatre. Tubal first uttered his 8 immortal lines exactly, give or take, 400 years ago. Happy birthday, Tubal. Yeah, Mazel tov, Shylock. Of course, you know, the actor playing Tubal would have had to play other parts as well. But we weren't a large company. Everybody had to double up, play more than one part. Everybody except, of course, the leading man. Shakespeare, he had the same leading man for more than 20 years. Richard Burbage. Not just an actor. No, he owned a big share of the company. He was the governor. Hey, can you imagine having scripts like that falling on your doormat every few months? Richard III, Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, King Lear. Second murderer, third witch, old man, a lord, Tubal. Oh, Tubal. Tubal, of course, Bill. I'd be delighted to have a look at it. Thank you so much. Tubal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Eight. But who's going to be my first Shylock? Not Richard Burbage. He's barely 30. He'll be playing the romantic lead. He'll want to get the girl. These things are important. No, he'll be playing Bassanio. Richard Burbage, superstar, upstaged by the Caddick the comic. But what a team. Shakespeare and Burbage, playwright, actor. Audience. That's the magic triangle. Now, the real reason I know you came here tonight. My scene. Excuse me. First of all, I'm going to update you on the plot a bit. While Shylock was having dinner with Antonio and his Christian friends, his daughter, Jessica, was eloping with another Gentile, a boy called Lorenzo. Don't ask me how they met. Now, the first thing that she does is to disguise herself by dressing up as a boy. I know, this is always happening in Shakespeare's plays. And his audiences, they loved it because they got a boy dressed as a girl, dressed as a boy. Whatever turns you on. But for a well-brought-up Jewish girl to put on men's clothes. Anyway, she does it. Then she starts to throw Shylock's most precious possessions from an upstairs window to Lorenzo and his drunken mates in the street. She loads herself up with more of Shylock's money and off they go. Shylock comes back from dinner. He finds his most precious possessions, his daughter and his ducats, gone. Imagine the rage. Doesn't say as much in that script, but of course the first person he turns to, Tubal. Wakes me up in the middle of the night. Of course, I offer to do anything I can to help. Now Shylock is convinced that those two kids have run off together to Genoa. Genoa? So, off I go. He does pay my expenses, but do you know how far it is from Venice to Genoa? I checked. It's 200 miles each way. And I must have flown, because I'm back as soon as I've gone. Shakespeare and geography, remember. And while I'm away, Shylock has made a complete mashuganer of himself, running about the streets, screaming about his diamond and his daughter, his ducats and his daughter. Frets, recriminations. You know, it got so bad, the little urchin boys in the street were running after him, shouting, "Your stones, your daughter and your ducats! Your stones, your daughter and your ducat!" I'd have done more good staying behind to look after him. As it is, the news that I have to bring back... Oh, no. Oh, now, this is it. My scene. Excuse me. Lips, teeth, tip of the tongue. Oh, before I come on, Shylock is already on stage. He's been quarrelling with a couple of Antonio's Christian friends. They see me coming. After a bit of racial abuse, they make themselves scarce. Now, I know this is not a long scene, but it is crucial. I have got two pieces of news to impart, the good news and the bad news. The good news is Antonio's almost certainly gone bust. The bad news is, in spite of all my searching, I have not been able to track down Lorenzo, Jessica, or the loot that they took with them. Now, from the moment I come on, I can see that Shylock is on the edge. How am I going to balance the good news with the bad news? Well, it's a very close thing, especially when I have to return to Shylock a piece of his stolen property. Right, now it's been a very, very long journey, and I've had to run the last part of it. Which explains why I'm a little bit out of breath. How now, Tubal? What news from Genoa? Hast thou found my daughter? I often came when I did hear of her, but cannot find her. Why, there. A diamond gone cost me 2,000 ducats in Frankfurt. The curse never fell upon our nation till now. I never felt it till now. 2,000 ducats in that and other precious, precious jewels. I would my daughter were dead at my foot and the jewels in her ear. Would she were hearsed at my foot and the ducats in her coffin. No news of them? Why so? And I know not what's spent in the search. Why thou, loss upon loss, the thief gone with so much and so much to find the thief, and no satisfaction, no revenge, no ill luck stirring but what lights from my shoulders, no sighs but of my breathing, no tears but of my shedding. Yes, other men have ill luck too. Antonio, as I heard in Genoa. What? Ill luck? Ill luck? Hath an argosy cast away, coming from Tripolis. I thank God. Is it true? Is it true? I spake with some of the sailors that escaped the wrack. I thank thee, good Tubal. Good news. Heard in Genoa. Your daughter spent in Genoa, as I heard, one night, 80 ducats. Thou stick'st a dagger in me. I shall never see my gold again. 80 ducats at a sitting? 80 ducats? There came divers of Antonio's creditors in my company to Venice that swear he cannot choose but break. I'm glad of it. I'll plague him, I'll torture him. I am glad of it. One of them showed me a ring he had of your daughter for a monkey. Out upon her. Thou torturest me, Tubal. it was my turquoise. I had it of Leah when I was a bachelor. I would not have given it for a wilderness of monkeys. But Antonio is certainly undone. Nay, that's true. That's very true. Go, Tubal, and fee me an officer. Bespeak him a fortnight before. I will have the heart of him, if he forfeit. For were he out of Venice, I can make what merchandise I will. Go, good Tubal, and meet me at our synagogue. Go, good Tubal. At our synagogue, Tubal.
I am a Jew. Hath not a Jew eyes? Hath not a Jew hands? Organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions, fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer, as a Christian is. If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? And if you wrong us, shall we not?
Revenge. If we are like you in the rest, we will resemble you in that. If a Jew wrong a Christian, what is his humility? Revenge. If a Christian wrong a Jew, what should his sufferance be by Christian example? Why? Revenge. The villainy you teach me I will execute, and it shall go hard, but I will better the instruction. Do you remember at the end of my scene, Shylock asked me to arrange for an officer to arrest Antonio when his time ran out? Well, after his arrest, Antonio and his jailer came to look for Shylock to try and reason with him. I would like to have reasoned with him too, except I've already had my 8 lines. I just stood there. None of us could get a word in edgeways. Jailer, look to him, tell not me of mercy. This is the fool that lent out money gratis. Jailer, look to him. I'll have my bond. Speak not against my bond. I have sworn an oath that I will have my bond. Thou call'st me dog before thou hadst a cause, but since I am a dog, beware my fangs. The Duke shall grant me justice. I do wonder, thou naughty jailer, that thou art so fond to come abroad with him at his request. I'll have my bond. I will not hear thee speak. I'll have my bond, and therefore speak no more. I'll not be made a soft and dull-eyed fool, to shake the head, relent and sigh, and yield to Christian intercessors. Follow not. I'll have no speaking. I will have my bond. I know I complain about my 8 lines, but you know the poor jailer in that scene has got no lines at all. He gets mentioned 3 times. He never utters. Who would you get to play a part like that? Who played that part originally at the Globe Theatre? William Shakespeare. Well, why not? He was an actor in the company. He had enough on his plate without having to learn his own lines. Meant he could be in the scene. He could watch out for any overacting. Meant he could count the house, see what the takings were like. 1 groat, 2 groat, 3 groat, 4 groat. Maybe you know William Shakespeare wasn't that good an actor. Not good enough to play a bigger part. Yeah, like Tubal. But whatever part he played, Shakespeare, he would have performed at court. When King James I came to the throne of England, the company changed its name to the King's Men. 5 new theatres were built during his reign, and the Merchant of Venice, it went down a storm. The king, he saw it in 1605. Twice. Loved it. Not all his subjects were so keen, though. The Puritans. The Puritans, to them, plays were the devil's work. Actors were his instruments. Theatres were denounced as Satan's synagogues. Well, that's the worst of both worlds. There was one Puritan, a man called William Prynne. William Prynne. He wrote a 1,000-page book about the theatre and actors. He said, "They kindle lusts in the spectators. They corrupt the young. They encourage pickpockets and strumpets." And he said that the crowd, pushing their way to the theatre on a Sunday afternoon, stopped the traffic and made people late for church. Prynne had some funny ideas about Jews as well. He thought that Jews were heavily into cross-dressing. Well, for their ceremonies. You know, there were people who thought that Jewish men could breastfeed babies, that Jewish men menstruated, and they lost so much blood they had to kill a Christian to top themselves up a bit. There was even a Spanish doctor who reckoned he could prove that Jews had tails. You know, when you think that Shakespeare, he never even met a Jew, officially. Shylock comes off quite lightly, yeah? But you'll be wondering what happened to Tubal. Disappeared. Tubal disappeared from the English stage for 99 years. Yes, it was 99 years before an audience had a chance to hear my 8 lines again. There was this playwright, a man called George Granville. George Granville reckoned he could improve on Shakespeare. So he relaunched The Merchant of Venice as the Jew of Venice. Okay, that is better billing for Shylock, but you're not going to believe this. He cut Tubal. How can Shylock be a rounded character? How can he express his anguish, share his grief, with no Tubal to pour his heart out to? I had to make a comeback. And I did. It was Valentine's Day, 1741. It was a triumph. My scene was greeted with a huge ovation. The Merchant of Venice back on the map. All thanks to one man. He was a big, ugly, hard-drinking Irishman called Charles Macklin. Charlie McLaughlin from Donegal. He persuaded the management of the Drury Lane Theatre to resurrect The Merchant of Venice as written by William Shakespeare, with himself as Shylock. He was already a man in his 40s, just a bit part player. It was, if you like, his last bid for stardom. He worked on the part, he researched Jewish history, he imagined himself as the great Jewish figures of the Old Testament, and the result was terrifying. Macklin's Shylock was a strong, vengeful, bright-eyed villain. Wasn't all acting either. Macklin, he was a tough customer in real life. Just a few years before, he'd been convicted of manslaughter, stabbed another actor backstage. They'd been quarreling about a wig. But you know, Macklin's Shylock was such a success, it stayed in his repertoire for the rest of his entire career, and that was another 40 years. He was approaching his 90th birthday. Teeth, all gone. So deaf, he could hardly hear the prompter. But there was a packed house, eager to see this phenomenon of the English stage. Signor Antonio, many a time and oft in the Rialto, you have rated me about my monies,
and my... Signor Antonio, many a time and oft, in the Rialto, you have rated me about my... What? God help me, my memory has left me. Ladies and gentlemen, I have within these very few hours been struck with a terror of mind I never in my life felt before. It has totally destroyed my corporal as well as my mental well-being. I must therefore request your patience this night, a request which an old man of 89 years may hope is not unreasonable. And he left the stage for the last time. His understudy had to finish that performance for him. Probably too well. But what Macklin did was to put Shylock centre stage, and that's where he stayed ever since. That bruiser from Donegal became the most celebrated Jew in England. Every generation, thinks that its actors are more naturalistic than the actors who've gone before. This can go too far. Nowadays, some actors are so naturalistic, you can't. You'd have had no trouble hearing Henry Irving. Sir Henry Irving, the greatest English actor-manager of the 19th century. And Shylock was his most famous tragic role. Irving was determined to reinvent the character. You see, he understood that people could see how life for Jews had changed all over the country. Well, the first time that Irving played Shylock, the Prime Minister of Great Britain and her empire was Benjamin Disraeli. Okay, a Christian convert, but so proud he had been born a Jew. Irving played Shylock as a victim of racial discrimination, determined to get his revenge. He got the audience on his side from the beginning, and then he milked their sympathy all the way. He played Shylock over 1,000 times, and the play was being translated all over the world into more than 20 languages, including Yiddish. And German, of course. Oh, Germans have always been mad about Shakespeare and The Merchant. At the beginning of the 20th century, there was this spectacular production by a man called Max Reinhardt. Max Reinhardt, greatest showman of all time. He had a revolving stage with a set that looked like it was Venice. Glorious costumes. His production was such a success, it stayed in the German repertoire right up until the 1930s. Reinhardt's first Shylock, though he wasn't a German, no, he was a Romanian called Rudolf Schildkraut. Not a tall man, stocky, well-built, big, bulgy eyes. He had this incredible contained anger, and every so often, fine actor. He went to America, made a big success. But they did not forget about him in Germany. They hung his portrait in pride of place at the Deutsches Theater in Berlin, and it stayed there until 1933, when Goebbels ordered personally that it be taken down and burnt. Like Reinhardt, you see, Schildkraut was Jewish. Hitler loved The Merchant of Venice. Oh, well, I've said it now. The play can't ever be quite the same again. If Hitler loved The Merchant of Venice. He wasn't that keen on Othello, by the way, but right through the 30s and the war, the Reich encouraged productions of The Merchant. In Vienna, the Gauleiter of that cultural capital commanded a performance of it. To him, every Jew active in Europe is a danger to European culture. Yes, Hitler loved The Merchant of Venice. But he wasn't happy with the entire plot. There is a bit that worries him. It's when Jessica, the Jewish girl,
marries Lorenzo, the Gentile boy, and they find bliss together in Belmont? Maybe the Nazis have a solution. If you make Jessica Shylock's illegitimate daughter by a Christian mother, everybody knows that Jewishness is inherited through the female. So maybe Jessica isn't really Jewish at all. She can marry Lorenzo without polluting the bloodstock. Why can't people leave the play alone? No, let it speak for itself. You don't like everything it says. I don't like everything it says. But your audience is your jury. The trial scene. A packed courtroom. The scent of blood in the air. Even before Shylock enters, the Duke of Venice, who is in charge of the case, takes Antonio aside and sits him down. Antonio, I am sorry for thee. Thou art come to answer a stony adversary, an inhuman wretch, incapable of pity, void and empty of any dram of mercy. Is that partial, or what? Then he calls Shylock into the court, and it's not long before he starts to threaten him. Shylock, he's having none of it. What judgment shall I dread, doing no wrong? The pound of flesh which I demand of him is dearly bought, 'tis mine, and I will have it. If you deny me, fie upon your law. There is no force in the decrees of Venice. I stand for judgment. Answer, shall I have it? Antonio gets the message. He tells him to get it over with, quick. Bassanio, he gets so nervous he starts to offer 3 times the money. By now, Shylock is getting so cocky, he starts to sharpen his knife on his boot. Uproar. It's good theatre, this trial scene, yeah? It's lousy law, but it's good theatre. But it betrays its origins. Il Pecorone, a fairy story. It begins as a civil trial about an unpaid debt, ends up with Shylock charged with treason on trial for his life. Nowadays, of course, the case would never have come to court. Anybody asking for a pound of human flesh in return for an unpaid debt, well, they'd be sectioned. Maybe they get sent off on holiday to Israel with their social worker. Maybe they'd get put into analysis. So tell me, Mr. Shylock, why do you want to take Mr. Antonio's flesh? Is it personal? Or does he merely represent something? Maybe your desire to take his flesh is in fact a desire to castrate him, to emasculate him. Or maybe, Mr. Shylock, you associate the cutting of human flesh with circumcision. What you really want to do, Mr. Shylock, is not to kill Mr. Antonio, but to ritualistically, to symbolically remove that part of him which makes him different from you. You want, in fact, to bond with him, to make him more like you, or conversely, you more like him. What you really want, Mr. Shylock, is to become him. Meanwhile, back in the courtroom, Shylock has stopped sharpening his knife on his boot. The Duke is panicking, threatening to call off the whole case, unless an old boy from Rome turns up to furnish an opinion. Suddenly, it's announced that a young lawyer has arrived instead of the old boy, with letters of introduction and a working knowledge of the case. Enter Portia, our heroine, disguised as a lawyer. I should tell you at this point, you know, I never called Shylock Shylock. You remember in my scene, I never once addressed him by his name, did I? No, Shylock is what the Gentiles called him. They weren't willing, they couldn't be bothered. Maybe they couldn't get their teeth around his real name. Well, it's an ancient name. It's in the first part of Gideon's book, Genesis. When Arphaxad had lived 35 years, he became the father of Shylock. Shylock lived 403 years. Shylock, an ancestor of Abraham's. Is your name Shylock? Shylock is my name. Of a strange nature is the suit you follow, yet in such rule that the Venetian law cannot impugn you as you do proceed. Does he confess the bond? He does. Then must the Jew be merciful. On what compulsion must I? Tell me that. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His sceptre shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. And earthly power doth then show likest God's, when mercy seasons justice. Therefore, Jew, though justice be thy plea, consider this, that in the course of justice none of us should see salvation. We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. I have spoke thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which if thou follow, this strict court of Venice must needs give sentence against the merchant there. My deeds upon my head. I crave the law, the penalty and forfeit of my bond. My deeds upon my head. Do you remember that crowd outside Pilate's palace, baying for blood? Let his blood be on us and on our children. Portia's mercy speech. But it's unarguable. Most of it could have come from my Venetian rabbi. Portia's mistake is to expect Shylock to see the world through Christian eyes. Shylock's case is that he has got the law on his side. Well, his law, Shylock's law, Jewish law, forbids the shedding of blood except in self-defense. If Portia had appealed to Shylock as a Jew, there may have been no need for her to go on with her elaborate trap. Why, thus it is. He must prepare his bosom for the knife. Aye, his breast, so says the bond, doth it not, noble judge, nearest his heart? Those are the very words. It is so. Are there balance here to weigh the flesh? I have them ready. Have by some surgeon, Shylock, on your charge, to stop his wounds, lest he do bleed to death. Is it so nominated in the bond? It is not so expressed. But what of that? For good you do so much for charity. I cannot find it. 'Tis not in the bond. With trifle time, I pray thee, pursue sentence. Why, thus it is. A pound of that same merchant's flesh is thine, the court awards it, and the law doth give it. Most rightful judge! And you must cut this flesh from off his breast. The law allows it, and the court awards it. Most learned judge! How much more elder art thou than thy looks? A sentence. Come, prepare. Tarry a little. There is something else. There certainly is. Antonio is about to lose his life on the word of a young woman impersonating a young man, impersonating a young lawyer. Originally, of course, it would have been a young boy impersonating a young woman, impersonating a young man. We don't need to go into all that. She's also brought false letters of introduction, claiming to be qualified. She's told the Duke a pack of lies, and she's married to the defendant's best friend. Tarry a little, there is something else. This bond doth give thee here no jot of blood. The words expressly are a pound of flesh. Take then thy bond, take thou thy pound of flesh, but in the cutting it, If thou dost spill one drop of Christian blood, thy lands and goods are, by the laws of Venice, confiscate unto the state of Venice.
Is that the law?
Thyself shall see the act, for as thou urgest justice, be assured thou shalt have justice, more than thou desirest.
I take this offer then, pay thrice the bond, and let the Christian go.
Soft. The Jew shall have all justice. Soft, no haste. He shall have nothing but the forfeiture. Therefore prepare thee to cut off the flesh. Shed thou no blood, nor cut thou less nor more, but just a pound of flesh. If thou takest more or less than a just pound, be it so much as makes it light or heavy in the substance, or the division of the 20th part of one poor scruple, nay, if the scale do turn but in the estimation of a hair. Thou diest, and all thy goods are confiscate. Why doth the Jew pause? Take thy forfeiture.
Give me my principal and let me go.
Thou hast refused it in the open court. Thou shalt have merely justice and thy bond.
Shall I not have barely my principal?
Thou shalt have nothing but the penalty, to be so taken at thy peril.
Jew. Why then the devil give him good of it. I'll stay no longer question.
Tarry, Jew. The law hath yet another hold on you. It is enacted in the laws of Venice, if it be proved against an alien, that by direct or indirect attempts he seek the life of any citizen, the party against the which he doth contrive shall seize 1/2 his goods. The other half comes to the privy coffer of the state, and the offender's life lies in the mercy of the Duke only, against all other voice, in which predicament I say thou standst.
Down, therefore, and beg mercy of the Duke.
Down, therefore, beg mercy of the Duke. Whatever happened to the quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the plain. Shylock's got no choice. He has to kneel before the Duke. That thou shalt see the difference of our spirit, I pardon thee thy life before thou ask it. For half thy wealth that is Antonio's, the other half comes to the general state, which humbleness may drive unto a fine.
Nay, take my life and all.
Pardon not that. You take my house when you do take the prop that doth sustain my house. You take my life when you do take the means whereby I live. What mercy can you render him, Antonio? So please my lord the Duke, and all the court, to quit the fine for 1/2 of his goods, I am content. So he will let me have the other half in use to render it upon his death unto the gentleman that lately stole his daughter. 2 things provided more: that for this favour he presently become a Christian. The other, that he do record a gift here in the court of all he dies possessed unto his son Lorenzo and his daughter. Art thou contented, Jew? What dost thou say?
I am
content. Clerk, draw a deed of gift.
I pray you give me leave to go from hence. I am not well. Send the deed after me, and I will sign it.
Get thee gone. But do it! Exit Shylock. Well, that's the end of his story. Oh, that's the end of Tubal's story too, of course. Without a Shylock, well, there's no need of a Tubal. My role, it's crucial, but it's functional. I do know that. But just like life, you know, the play, it goes on without us. Look, there's Bassanio and Antonio thanking the young lawyer now for saving Antonio's life. They're offering him a gift. Any gift. Lawyer doesn't want anything. But where is Shylock? He said, I am not well. Is he sick? He's agreed to sign, agreed to convert, agreed to become a Christian. He said so. I am content. Now Bassanio is insisting the lawyer must take something, anything at all, anything at all. The ring. She wants the ring. That ring that she gave him when they were betrothed. That ring that he swore never to part from, lose, or give away. And Bassanio is refusing, of course, offering anything else. The lawyer doesn't want anything else. She's going off in a huff. But where is Shylock? He's still got half his money left, half a loaf. He can do what he likes with it now. Spend it, save it, invest it, lend it out at 10%. Oh. Bassanio's changed his mind. Sent the ring after the young lawyer. And an invitation to dinner. Oh, she's turned down the dinner. But she's pocketed the ring. But where is Shylock? He can leave the ghetto now. He can leave Venice, leave Italy. He can get a new job, no more usuring. He can leave that behind. Leave me behind. Oh, a change of scene now. The last act. We're back on Portia's territory now, the beautiful Belmont. It's a lovely moonlit night in the garden. Lorenzo and Jessica talking, teasing each other under the stars. They seem happy. Happy enough. But where is Shylock? He should go to Belmont. He should make it up with Jessica, because Jessica's all that he's got left now. All that's left of his beloved Leia. Listen. Music. Aha! Oh, that's beautiful music. Huh? It's coming from inside Portia's house. And she's come home. And there's Bassanio and Antonio. Oh, they're all so happy to be together again. The ring. She's asking about the ring. He can't deny it. How could he have parted with it? How could you have parted? Shylock? Shylock? It's my fault. It's all my fault. I should never have told you how Jessica parted with your ring. Your betrothal ring, that ring from your beloved Leia. And for a monkey, you need never, ever have known. Shylock, look, they're all going into the house now. They're all smiling. They're all laughing. Shylock, it's a happy ending. Shylock, it's a happy ending.
Thou torturest me, Tubal.
It was my turquoise. I had it of Leah when I was a bachelor. I would not have given it for a wilderness of monkeys. I pray you, give me leave to go from hence.